Hello, everyone. My name is Harold Scott, and I'm with the American Online Chess Academy. And we're going to be bringing to you a series of online videos posted on YouTube and live streams. And our very first installment today, we're going to be bringing to you a classic game by Bobby Fischer versus Fischer-Benko. And this was from the U.S. Championship in 1963, a very memorable game. This was also the very first U.S. Championship that was where Bobby had a perfect 11-0 score. He had 11 wins, 0 draws, 0 losses, and it hasn't been duplicated ever since. So very memorable U.S. Championship. And Fischer-Benko, of course, was a renowned player in his own right. He had a column in Chess Life magazine for many years, Fischer-Benko's Endgame Laboratory. Of course, we also know the opening, the Benko Gambit. And Benko also equally known for his endgame knowledge. Okay, so let's get to our game. And our game starts out with e4 by Bobby, his favorite first move. And as he used to say, best by test. Okay. And then g6 is played by Benko here. And when our opponent doesn't fight directly for the center, we play d4. So we develop our pawns in ideal fashion, e4 and d4. Okay, the bishop comes to g7, and then white chooses to play knight c3 here. Now, you could also develop the knight to f3, for example, but Bobby wants to keep his options open in this position here. With knight c3, he keeps alive the possibility of playing f4, which is known as the Austrian attack, a very aggressive system. So next move is d6. And then f4, and now knight f6, and we have ourselves a Peertz defense. The main difference between the modern defense and the Peertz defense is with the Peertz, the knight goes to f6, and in the modern defense, the knight ends up going elsewhere usually, sometimes to e7. And the Peertz defense, it always leads to interesting positions. I've seen many games where Black wins with creative play, or he ends up on the short side of things and gets slaughtered. Famous players who have played the Peertz defense: Yasser Seirawan, of course, Roman Djindjiashvili, and also the Canadian Grandmaster Duncan Suttles. So one of my good friend Brian Caron's favorite players, Duncan Suttles. So many fine games have been produced by him. So our game continues with knight f3. Now, what white wants to do in this position is play in the center, perhaps with an e5 advance, or play on the king side. Okay? And black usually wants to break in the center with an e5 and try to weaken the white center and play on the dark squares. So the game continues with black castling. And then white plays bishop to d3 here. Now, it may seem like that bishop c4 is a better diagonal to place the bishop on, but tactically, black has the fork trick here after taking and playing d5. Okay, so you might be familiar with that in e4, e5 openings, such as the Italian game with 4 knights, but it applies equally as well here. Okay, so he decided that bishop d3 to avoid any of that kind of nonsense is the proper way to go here. Okay, bishop g4, developing the bishop and pinning the knight, and so Bobby chooses to put the question to the bishop here with the move h3. And then Fischer-Benko decides to take, and Bobby takes back with his queen. Okay. Now knight c6, developing the knight and threatening to take the pawn on d4 with this move. So he's got to be careful. So what's a good move here? Well, develop your bishop while protecting. That's always a good idea, to bring a piece out and not fall behind in development and to defend the pawn there. So Black decides to play e5 here. Okay, trying to get his idea in the center, breaking in the center with e5. And so also he's threatening to, Black is threatening to take on d4, so it kind of forces the hand just a little bit. And so White plays d takes e5. Okay, Black takes back. And what should White do in this position here? Should he take on e5 with the pawn? No, that would allow the knight to take back. This pawn on e4 would be very weak. And Black would have the initiative here after forking the bishop and the queen. So that would not be a good response for White in this position. So what does White do instead? Well, White's intention is to play on the king's side. And so the best move to do that is to play f5 here. Okay, try and grab a little space on the king's side and not open up the center entirely. Okay, so after that, Black decides to take. Now this move is, I would say, a little bit on the dubious side. Okay, because after all, it does open up and expose Black's king here. So what should White do? White's got a couple of choices here. Should he take back with the pawn on f5, or should he take with the queen here? Well, taking with the pawn on f5, it kind of allows Black to maybe expand at some point with his pawn, playing e5, e4, and taking with the queen makes more sense because White's going to castle and have some pressure along the f file, because his queen and rook will be on the f file, and he keeps the pawns fixed on e4 and e5, which will allow him to have a little bit more of a freer hand on the king's side. Okay, so next up, the knight goes to d4, attacking the queen, and the queen comes back to f2 to safety here. Okay, next, Black retreats the knight. Interesting move here. I think he wants to relocate the knight to d6 and potentially maybe break with f5 at some point. So clearing the knight out of the way there. So, okay, so White decides to castle at this moment. And now the knight does come to d6. And Black plays queen g3. Okay, with potential threats here of bishop h6. Okay, so Black plays king h8 to avoid any pin along the g file, and it takes away the threat of bishop to h6. And next up, White plays queen g4. Okay, why queen g4? He just moved his queen to g3, and now he relocated to g4. Well, it's with the intention of keeping the f5 square under control. Okay, so that's Bobby's idea with the queen g4 move. Okay, next Black plays c6. Okay, keeps the knight out of d5, for example. So it does have some merit to it. Queen h5. Okay, still keeping the f5 square under control, but now White has threats, for example, of bishop takes knight, e takes d4, and then advancing our e pawn, and both the bishop and the queen would be pointing right at h7, targeting h7. So there is some threats with this idea of queen h5. So, okay, so Black plays queen e8. This is a defensive idea that Black has. and it is to be able to answer the move bishop takes, pawn takes, and the move e5 with the move f5, okay, which is putting the question to the white queen here. And I know black's knight is under attack, so if white takes the queen, we would certainly recapture with the knight here. So that is black's idea. Sometimes we see such an idea with queen e8 in French structures, where black wants to break with f6 or f5 when white has more space on the king side. So that is black's idea here. But we get to an important point of the game here, and the real highlight of the game here is this idea and sequence that is coming up next here. So white continues with the exchange on d4, and e takes d4, and now here's the double exclamation move that Bobby plays here. He plays rook f6. Okay. Well, what's up with rook f6? Isn't he just offering a rook for nothing here? Well, black would be in deep trouble, actually, if he took the rook, because then we'd play e5, and he has no defense to the queen coming to h7 and end up getting mated. So this rook move here actually is a great idea because it blocks the defensive capabilities of black. Black would love to be able to play f5 here, but rook f6 kind of gums up the works here. Okay, so rook f6 again, and black responded with king g8. And after king g8, we play e5, opening lines and attacking. h6, okay, and then after simply knight e2, black resigned in this position. Okay, the idea is, well, if bishop takes f6, queen takes h6, and mate is coming here, and also black's knight is under attack here. So after knight e2, let's say if the knight comes to b5 for example, to avoid being captured by the pawn, well, white simply has this idea, queen f5 here, with mate coming on h7 once again. So a very short game, only 21 moves, but a very famous game, the first in our classic series here. We have many, many more games that we're going to bring to you, also different themes as well. And again, we want to thank everybody for tuning in. And our web address is AmericanOnlineChess.com. Or if you need to contact us, you can reach us at AmericanOnlineChess@gmail.com. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time.